Hello, and welcome to On the Road to DevHops. My name is Trace Bannon. I am an architect, an engineer, a developer, a geek, and this is my friend and my sparring partner, Bryan Finster. Bryan,
Yeah, and I'm all those things too.
you are.
Yeah, I kind of enjoy this whole how do we deliver things better thing.
Bryan, someone asked me the other day, so why should I listen to you? And Bryan, I'm going to ask you, why should I listen to you?
I've got pain, Trace. I've been delivering solution software and large enterprises for a long time, and I've got pain, and I've also experienced what it's like to not have pain. So you should probably listen to me because I've also got fails, things not to do.
Wait a minute. So you're saying experience. So the reason to
Scars. I
listen.
call them scars.
All
You
right.
might you might call them experience. I call them scars.
Same thing. Same. Well, the positives probably don't leave the same scars, but and I think one of the things that you and I do throughout our careers, especially over the last couple of years, has been to share those experiences. We're sharing them in this way, but you and I both blog. You've got a couple of pretty great articles. I know that you've written a book recently or contributed to a book. Talk a little bit about that, Bryan.
I contributed a chapter to modern software. Modern cybersecurity, which was released, and I've got the 5 minute DevOps blog where I take things that anger me and clean them up a little bit and turn them into helpful, I hope, articles about how to live life a little better.
Yeah, and I mean, that was one of the ways that you and I and a number of other folks started the minimum CD, and we are now maintainers of a pretty good body of information, and that started the offshoot for you, didn't it? About the safe.
Oh, well, actually, no. So minimumcd.org, I think, is useful information. It's like what's the absolute minimum things that you can do to see the benefits from continuous delivery.
Right.
Oh my gosh. But then I also have sorry, it's recording. I'm not sure what that was. But I also, a while back, we were having a conversation with the Dojo Consortium about how do we, how do we help people. And we decided that I suggested we needed a scaling framework, and everyone threw things at me. But the outshoot of that was scaledagiledevops.com, where you too can learn how to become certified in being with the Scaled Agile DevOps Maturity Framework, so that you too can be a SADMF.
And I believe that there have been some people who have questioned, "Are you serious? Is this real stuff?" And
Yes,
because
yes, a
it.
surprising number of people have. Now, I will say that a majority of those have pushed back that this is terrible. And I was, and to which my response is, yes, I agree. Thank you for agreeing. This is terrible.
Oh my goodness. Bryan, a couple topics we wanted to talk about tonight. Why don't we dive into this and do a little bit of sparring? And you and I have been chatting about how we build teams, how we pull people together. And one of
Mm.
the things that we've been talking about recently is whether or not you need to have a testing team.
Yeah, I've had conversations for years with people like, oh, yeah, you absolutely have to have a testing team because how else can you ensure that you're building things correctly? I'm like, by verifying you're building things correctly while you're building it? I'm adamantly opposed to having anybody uh, doing acceptance testing for me. It's my team's job to do acceptance testing. Uh, but I think we've talked before that having a team doing testing is different from having a tested team doing acceptance testing for you. So there's some nuance there we should discuss.
Um, yeah, there'd also be interesting for us to dive in a little bit into some of the nuances of performance testing and a little bit of the specialization that can happen around that.
Well,
So
but performance testing is something I can automate in the pipeline. I don't need somebody doing that for me.
true, true, but is my development team, my delivery team, the ones who are focused on that and doing
They,
the monitoring as that testing is going on? You can do that, but
well,
you're
so I have this definition of software engineer,
okay.
right? A software engineer is responsible for delivering working solutions,
Hmm.
not code, working solutions. That means it's performant, it's secure, it's stable, it's available, and it's useful.
And so you don't believe that there are developers anymore. Everybody's an engineer.
Everyone should be.
Okay. So
I
I
think
get,
that there's coders
okay.
and then there's software engineers,
I would agree. And
right?
coders and the ability to be, I'll call them new collars, non-traditionals, take them and train them up. We still need to have coders, but you're right. I think an engineer,
Well,
and I think there are engineers,
I mean,
and I think I
there's
still think there's a role for architecture. I know that you tend to poo-poo architecture, but I don't believe in boxes and lines architecture. That's not the type of architect I am. I
oh no
believe
no
that I
no
have to be able to same and I'm an engineer as well. I can say that.
oh no no I
So I
don't poo poo
design, build,
architecture.
deliver, right? You know?
Yeah, no. I don't poo poo architecture. I poo poo people who have a job to lay out standards or define things that everybody ignores.
If they
Right?
are in fact being ignored, then they're not doing their job. If I am an architect and or an engineer or I'm a leader in a technical role,
Yeah.
and we need to have some reasonable base standards, right? There are differences between standards and guidance. Providing that means that I've worked with the teams, they understand it. I'm not writing it because I like to write and because I feel good mandating things. It's because there's a risk proposition against it, or there's an additional value to those teams. It helps them to move
So this
faster,
feels
right?
this feels like another podcast we should
It
do
does. We'll have to
on
come
being
back to that. But I want to look.
an effective architect.
Well, that's true. But it gets us back to we're not being, I don't think you and I are particularly religious about roles and titles. We're
No, I
trying to
think
get to done
yeah, no, I
engineering
think
problems.
this is the problem we have is that everything gets reduced to
Mhm.
religious wars instead of what is it we're trying to accomplish, right? Now, when I'm looking at team structure, I'm looking at it as an engineering problem.
Mhm.
There's two problems I'm trying to solve with when I'm building a team for delivery. The first problem I'm trying to solve is actually operational.
Okay.
We shouldn't start any building anything until we have an idea about operations. And when you're developing with modern software development, which is what I call continuous delivery, is
Right.
modern software development, operations means that first we prove that we can operate the thing before we start building features. The very first thing we deliver as a feature is the ability to deliver. We validate that we can deliver and that we can operate the thing that we're building, and then we start building features on it. And the importance of this, though, is that when things break, I validated also that I can fix them rapidly using our standard delivery method and not using a workaround.
Right. So we're on the same page that standards are not evil, but um what's the term that I want to use here? Consistency for the sake of consistency. There's a quote somewhere that says consistency is the hobgoblin of the small-minded. Standards need to have a place and a reason. They should be supporting what your architectural goals are, which track back to what your business or your mission objectives are in the first place. What the hell are you doing? Why are you doing it? That's the whole purpose. And we're trying to get to repeatability and predictability. I mean, engineering is predictability, right? It is being able to scientifically understand if I do X, Y is going to happen.
Well, and this is the problem and it gets broader than just this topic of should you have a specialized team for testing,
Mhm.
right? Or even should you have specialists on your team for testing? It goes, it's like, oh, should we do Scrum or anything else, right? Everyone tends to focus on the what
Mhm.
instead of, or I'm sorry, not even the what, but the how.
How, right? It's all about the how.
Instead of the what are we trying to accomplish?
Mhm.
And we're engineering for the ability to rapidly repair production And the second thing we're engineering for is rapid feedback on the ideas we have for how to improve what's currently running in production.
Exactly. Now
Right?
you did ask a question though, Brian, which is there still a need for is the specialization go away at all? As I think it's a mixed bag of does it go away? Now, again, we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
what do you call it? The North Star for being able
Yeah.
to build out teams. We want to get to a point where we have highly skilled individuals that are similarly skilled in that team. Somebody may be deeper in one area than another, and that's fine, right? That's how storming, forming, norming, interest of humans works together. But we're not necessarily building what we're hearing about right now. Hey, you need a cross-functional team. You need a
Yeah.
multidisciplinary team. You need to have a tester. You need a functional guy. And so what they've
And
done
on,
is
well, on
they
the
take
other
a
end of
waterfall
that,
and put you together.
on the other end of that, you have all these people saying we're only going to hire full stack developers, right?
Yep.
And in bowling, you have two gutters, and both are wrong,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And the reality is that you need a full stack team,
Well,
but, but you need a resilient full stack team, which means that if as people change, which they do, they come, they go, right? That the team is resilient to change, that you have breadth and depth on the team to be able to handle change within the team so that you can sustainably, continuously deliver value to the end user.
I've in all my teams for years.
Yeah.
I would like to say decades, but I don't want to say decades because that indicts age. So I'll say for years. I've always sought out having. I'll start out by saying overlap, so that there was duplication because I never wanted to have that guy, that one person who had that one skill,
Or even just two.
or even just two, because someone's sick and then somebody else leaves the firm or leaves the organization.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So cross training is an important part of it, but it gets back to what are the skills that are needed for the particular problem that you're trying to solve,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
bringing those people together, and then being able to architect the delivery stream, right? Seamless delivery. That's what we're aiming at, is a repeatable process, automate wherever and whatever we can, and building in that goodness from the beginning. But all those peeps, we want them to be as
Well,
cross-trained
and
as possible.
and one of the things we didn't touch on that I think we should, when I talk about, I said I'm adamantly opposed to having another team do acceptance testing for my application. Well, this goes back to problem number one. I need to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and repair production with minimum MTR and go back to sleep.
Okay.
Now, if I have a testing team, and I'm using my standard process, I need to wake up the testing team so they can do a full regression test on my
Well,
application.
that's not what's gonna
That's not going to
happen,
happen.
Mr. Finster. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna throw process out the window because holy crap,
Which is
somebody called me at 3 a.m.
which is wholly unacceptable because we're using continuous delivery, not because we're trying to deliver features faster, but because we want stability. Right? Continuous delivery is about operational stability. And so if with that, then I have to use my emergency process to deliver everything. Right? My emergency process is the safest way to deliver. Why would I want to, in the middle of a dumpster fire, make it worse? Right? And so I need to have this safe way to deliver, which means I need to engineer, I need to architect a team based off of what could go wrong, how could we respond to it, and keep everybody safe.
So there's that a lot of different things come to mind there. So we
Yeah,
think about Jonathan Smart's book, right? Excellent. Sooner, Safer, Happier, and
love that
making
book. Yeah.
sure that
Yeah.
people are safer. Yeah, I had a couple of calls with him. And he's fantastic. I didn't realize at first we are both from Deloitte. I found that kind of interesting. He moved
Yeah,
on from there,
I'll tell
but
you some stories later about me beating John up about some stuff about Deloitte.
well, I'm sure we'll swap some pretty good stories on it. But that brings, that there's the sooner, safer, happier is there's merit when we start talking about making sure that people are safer. Cognitive load is a part of this.
Yeah.
We want to have long-lived teams. And you're not going to have a long-lived team if morale is low. If people are siloed in only being able to do one thing. And you and I in the government space are finding some interesting challenges because the way the contracts are written and the way that roles are defined are actually very fine-tuned. You are a tester and these are the things that you must have against you, and you are a developer level this, or you are an engineer, and you heard me say that, a developer or an engineer or an architect, and then there are various flavors of those. That's going to be tough to address. We can do it, but I think it's going to be tough to address because it's policy based. But let's go back
Well, but
to
it's like everything else, right? So I've been doing this, how do we get people to improve their value streams problem for a
Mhm.
while. And the hard part of it isn't the tooling. It's changing people's minds about how, it's changing their habits. Okay. Changing the mindset they use to approach these problems. And yeah, those things are true. And they're wrong. And we need to highlight that they're wrong. We need to point to what they should look like, and then relentlessly push people towards better.
I tend to agree with you. We had a great conversation earlier today. I was talking to a woman by the name of Dawn Bontempo. She was a former government SES, but she really focuses on, I hate the term organizational change management, but she focuses on how you can emulate the behaviors, model the behaviors that you want to help you influence
Mm-hmm.
culture over time so that you build
Yeah.
that culture together. And that's exactly what you're talking about is let's provide the scaffolding, both the process scaffolding and the structure scaffolding of so that people can emulate those behaviors. And eventually that becomes the new muscle memory, because that's a hard part of this. That's a real hard part of this is, what do you mean I don't need a tester? What do you mean I don't need a quality
Yeah,
engineer? What?
and Dave Farley released a video on the continuous delivery YouTube channel last week, I think, talking about how to change your boss's mind, right? And this managing up thing and managing sideways, and if you really want things to be better, it requires you getting better at communication and managing up and sideways and down in every direction, managing in every direction all the time, to message that, look, this is wrong for this reason, and here's some examples of why.
Yep.
Provide data, and repeating it constantly until you get to the change you want.
It's interesting. You and I were chatting earlier about Conway's Law, and kind of reminds me that some of the best firms have really tried to restructure their organization and then build out teams in a different way. And they failed because they were restructuring their organization based on like probably kind of like your boxes and lines architect, right? They drew the picture and it made logical sense when it was written that way and when it was pushed out to people. But what they didn't do was hyper focus on the mission objective, the business objective, the why. Why are we doing this? Getting down to those objectives and then
Well, and I
running a
think,
reverse Conway. Even the reverse Conway maneuver, right, is identify what you need to do and then figure out, bend the organization to meet
well,
it.
and so for the people that aren't familiar with this, right, Conway's law, to paraphrase, basically says that your system will reflect the communication paths within your organization. And Melvin Conway, wrote this back in the late '60s. And a reverse Conway maneuver is reorganizing your organization to look like the system you wish to deliver.
Exactly.
Now, I've actually experienced this. We did
Mhm.
this at the organization I worked for. We had a very large, very important, mission critical, 25-year-old, 25 million line, monolithic application that was incredibly fragile and difficult to change. And we wanted to make that easier to deliver. And we started with re-architecting what the team should look like, and then assigning each team business capabilities so that we could re-architect the application.
Well, I can give you examples of the opposite of working in a Conway's Law situation where the middleware team and the database team and then the services team and the front end team. Ooh, and then subdivide that based on the lines of business where they were focused. So you want to talk about matrixed and
Yeah, and
eventually
this
getting
is the
to a
problem.
mess, right? That was the problem is hyper matrixed. If you want to, it's fine. If we want to, they talk about we need to build community. All the developers need to know each other. Yes. And all of these people need to know each other. Well, yeah. But if we want to do that, we can affinity. People can be assigned, associated to a domain area and really stay together as a long-lived team and then have affinity, right? Be meeting with other people in the organization that are doing similar things, but over across the hall over there where they're delivering a different type of
Well,
business thing for a different reason.
I saw a cartoon a while back that said that if Conway's Law is correct, then our applications are designed by HR.
Uh, there's
And
truth to that. There's truth.
but this is the reality is when you architect your organization around making HR easy, then you get terrible applications that are optimized for HR. And absolutely to your point, yes, we want people that know a bunch about testing, but they don't have to be in a testing organization, right? You
Or
have
if they
people
are
that,
in a testing organization, it's an affinity. It's a growth opportunity.
right,
It's
but
where
it's
they
not a
go to
report
recharge
structure.
and learn. It's not they're dispatched or we hand over, right? Because we're trying to get rid of those hard dependencies between these separate organizations with
Yes.
separate funding streams and
And this
separate
is this
rigidity.
is basic service design.
Mhm.
Organization design should mirror service design. If I have a service with a bunch of hard dependencies, meaning this dependency over here must be operating or I fail utterly, right? And I have several of those, then what I have is a distributed monolith. That actually should just be one service because we have hard dependencies that we cannot operate independently of each other at all, right?
Yep.
And this is the same with teams. If I have a hard dependency for delivery on another team, then they should just be part of my team. Because
So,
otherwise, I am not capable of operating as independently as I should be operating to
right.
meet the business need.
Now I want to pull the thread just a little bit on hard dependencies versus soft dependencies.
Yeah.
Now, when we're talking about building teams they're not homogenous, but they are more in kind, skilled with one another. There are variations across the people who are on that team.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that there are not specialists in the organization. The great example that I come back to is the UX person who truly understands the psychology of human factor interaction. I want to be able to consult them. I want them to come and
Oh,
double
sure,
check these
but that's a
things.
soft
But
dependency. That's
right,
information. That's not a
exactly,
delivery dependency.
exactly.
Because even if I don't have their information when I would like to have it, they can always provide feedback that changes what we do in the future to bring the front end, that user experience, closer to what it should have been originally. But it doesn't prevent me from delivering something that's good. It just prevents me from delivering something that's better,
Right. It
right?
should be good enough and at all times bringing value. So good enough and delivering value, right, with rapid feedback to get that improvement that's necessary,
But if I have a
continuous improvement.
requirement for UX sign off before I deliver anything, then UX should be a capability on my team, and we say
Mhm.
yes, we agree with user experience.
Absolutely. But I think we're, getting back to there will be specialists and it's okay. There will be people who want to dive deep in a particular area, and that's great. The network nerd, God love them. They don't need to be on my team every day, but there are times where I need their help. So we do want to be able to reach out, have that reach back for those certain people at different times.
Well, and let's bring it back to real, okay? I'm
Hmm.
on a team now where I'm the product owner and one of the developers on the team,
Hmm.
okay? Um, Not everybody on the team can do everything, can support everything that the team does. But it would take three of us to leave for the team to get halted, and it's a team of five. So I consider that reasonably resilient.
I think that that is reasonable. I think that that's very reasonable. Very
But
reasonable.
but we have full ownership of everything, and it would take three of us to kill the product or to
There you go.
halt the product, right?
So the moving away from the ivory tower, but moving into, but identifying kind of a pragmatic target state.
Yes,
We want there to be as much cross sharing of knowledge and as much shared skilling as there can be. We
yes.
want to make sure that it takes a mass migration of the team in order for it to be crippled because there's enough overlap. We want to acknowledge that there are specialists and that's okay, but those are the soft dependencies into us and not our hard dependencies. And we want to automate the whole way out. We want to automate and get feedback as
Well, and
consistently and continuously as we can.
and always primarily top of mind operations,
Mhm.
right? We want to cross train also, even if we don't initially have the same skills. We want to have some overlap because if things fall apart, I don't want to wake up the entire team to fix it, right? If something breaks, how can we make sure that we don't have to wake everybody up to fix it? Somebody has to fix it. And it's our team's responsibility because our stuff broke.
Well, I think we'll have to jump into another day and talk about that, Brian, about how do we have better cross pollination with operations. Truly, truly. I'm dev and I tell you the story all the time. I'm dev, married to ops, and it's been that way for a long, long time. And when we both worked at AccuWeather, and I can say that years ago, they would call our house because he was operations and they got us both. And that was pretty incredible because I got to learn about what their needs were there, them, those guys over there. But it also meant that I did my tour with operations. And so I learned about it from early on. That experience has shaped the rest of my career. Getting that smarts back and forth, both sides understanding, walking in the shoes, but to your point, being able to do at least some of the troubleshooting. Might not be able to do all of it because there can be some
So,
policy and legal
so,
restrictions in a production environment. But
so
again, we're
we
talking
should
North Star.
we should talk about this in
Mhm.
another
We will.
session because my experience is I have been always from day one dev and ops.
Yeah.
It's always been my job, both, right? And DBA and BA and whatever. That's always been my job. So we should have a conversation and share those different perspectives
Those are going to be great stories. So, we call this On the Road to DevHops because you and I meet up at night.
and
We
drink.
have a we have our dinner with our spouses and we get together and we drink. But we have to share what we're drinking tonight to really make it worthwhile so people
That's true.
realize that there's fun to this. So Brian, what are you drinking tonight?
So I'm out of bourbon, but tonight I'm having a pretty nice Cabernet that I'm enjoying. My
That
wife,
is so sophisticated in your stemless glass and all. Ooh.
yeah, my wife is the wine drinker, and she has turned me on to the joys of Cabernet. So
That is wonderful. A cab sav is one of my favorites. However, 2022 for Bannon is a year of wellness. Now, during the pandemic, my pandemic drink of choice is, in fact, White Claw, which makes everybody giggle and laugh. But I have learned to drink a grown-up drink. And so I went to the local pub. We have been going there on Saturday nights, and they make something called a Timon Island, and they taught me how to make it. And it is keto friendly because I am watching all my carbs. They will actually make it for me with my own syrup. So it is 2 parts gin that has been infused with cucumber. It is 1 part simple syrup with rosemary, and it is a 1 part lime. So it's kind of like a gimlet with a little bit of extra sweet, but very smooth, very nice.
I'll just encourage you to try Woodford Reserve is also low carb
Well,
and
I
less
never knew.
effort.
I never
Let,
knew
let,
that gin could be so wonderful. See, there's my
let,
little sprig. See my little
yeah,
sprig in there?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That seems like a lot of work. Where,
Well, when I'm paying somebody else to smack it and shake it and do it. Now for tonight, though, my husband actually got me the Chicago shaker. Is that what you call it? The two instead of having the martini shaker. It actually got me the. I'm trying to get what I've been trying to do most recently is to make it taste as great as my bartender. My bartender one is Ashley and the other is Kate. No joke. I listen to their rhythm, so I've been trying to emulate their shaker rhythm. I haven't quite gotten there yet. So once I do that, it'll be better. So Bryan, um, thank you for connecting with me tonight. Thanks for sparring a bit. Thanks for sharing. We will post this, and when we do, we'll add in links to some of the different things that we talked about, where our listeners can go and read those things and make their own determination on what they think. We're always looking for questions and comments as well. We'll post the name of the email box where if people want to post questions to us, well, the questions that we're bringing up right now are not ours. They've been questions that have asked of us and we've been sparring about, but love to bring other questions forward from our listeners.
yeah, I'd love to hear some questions that we can really dig into to help people.
Yeah. All right. And with that, on the road to DevHops, Bryan, thank you so much. Cheers.
Yep. See you, Tracy.